what's the word? Santa Baby very much is evocative of the time of like, I don't even know what to call it, but like the club singer, It's
Yeah.
like Jessica Rabbit. It's all those things you
Yeah.
just old movies where it's like a woman comes out and she's got just all dressed up. We're Santa. The guy in the crowd is Santa, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also, it's just fun. I like the Taylor Swift version. Not a lot of people like that one, but I
No,
like.
that's a good one. I like that one too.
But nothing beats Eartha Kitt going, "Come and trim my Christmas tree." Like she just hits every note with so much an emphasis.
You know,
Eartha Kitt.
David,
Santa Shorty.
Josh and I would all the way back flashback Christmas
Mm.
episode focused on music from the 80s and the 90s and those kinds of Christmas music. What's your Christmas music style? Are you a fan of the poppy? Are you a fan of like the true and tried classics? Like where do you fall on Christmas music?
My go-to, and this may lose me fans, but I don't care. My go-to is always corny country Christmas songs.
Oh, okay. Like
Yes.
grandma got run over by a reindeer.
At 12 Redneck Days of Christmas. Brad
Chicken Straight
Paisley.
Christmas cookies.
Yes, Christmas Cookies by George Strait is a great one. Brad Paisley has a great Christmas song called Santa Looks a Lot Like Daddy.
That's a good one.
That's a really good. Honestly, it's not Christmas until I hear Brad Paisley singing that song. I'd sing some now, but I feel like we get a copyright strike.
Oh, here's a good question. What makes that you said that? So what makes you feel like we're starting so many Santas? What makes you feel like the Christmas season? Is there something that really like for either one of you, does it make like something that really makes it feel like, okay, we getting ready? Like what is that moment?
I would say it's mostly musical for me. I would say that, a Blue Christmas, any version of Santa Claus is coming to town, whether that's Jackson 5 or Aerosmith or that awful Bruce Springsteen version.
I love Bruce, but that is a bad version of that song.
It's like a live cut of it.
I don't like it.
But there's clearly something going on for the live audience that the recorded audience doesn't get to enjoy because like somebody comes out just going, whoa, 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 and Bruce is like cracking up, singing it. But
that's the hard part about any live performance. It's hard to translate that when you weren't there.
in
What about
addition,
you,
I
Josh?
also want to throw a shout out to one of my favorite gimmick Christmas songs, which is the a cappella band Straight No Chaser has a Christmas medley that is, it's funny, but it's also fire. Like it is just like, so it's 12 days of Christmas, but they keep interlacing other Christmas songs into it or other holiday songs into it. And then it finishes, and you guys are like this, by transforming 12 Days of Christmas into Africa by Toto. And it's awesome.
That's
I love
good.
it. It's how I, whenever Africa comes on, I just sing 12 Days of Christmas.
Beautiful.
Because of
I
how
think
look it up, Straight No Chaser, 12 Days medley, I think it's called.
Christmas kicks into gear for me when a couple things happen. One, I need to see Christmas lights. So whatever house is the first house I see that put Christmas lights on, that's the first check. And the second check, it must be cold outside. If I see it and it's 70 degrees, it feels fake. If I see it and it's 45, well, now it's Christmassy. And then I fire up some Christmas songs and the rest is history. Because there's a lot of music tied into it for me as well. I feel like I hit a point toward the beginning of December, and I'm actually not there yet as of December 4th, which is probably a little later than usual. But I'll hit a point where I switch to Christmas music mode, and I don't even want to hear any music. I don't want to hear any music that's not Christmas for like a month. Yeah. And I think it times up with, all of the Spotify Wrapped stuff and Apple Music Replay and all that, because that's become a traditional endpoint of the year. Because, it's like, I still have a month of music to listen to. Why do they always give it to us a month early?
Right.
Because I'm going to switch to Christmas mode. That's why.
Yeah. Like I'm going to listen to Porky Pig sing Blue Christmas 80 times in the next.
Yeah. No one wants Christmas music
Christmas.
So
for me, mine's a weird one where like for the Christmas season to truly begin, and this is a recent tradition, but like it really kicks it off for me is I watch Bill Murray's A Very Merry Christmas on Netflix. And for me, that is so wonderfully weird. And I am always a big fan of like alternative Christmas things rather than more traditional and well worn, I'll say.
Right.
For some of those movies that have been around forever. But this special's got a little bit of weirdness, it's also got some classics. Bill Murray is a classic. There's a George Clooney in there, but you've also got Miley Cyrus singing one of the most beautiful renditions of Silent Night that I've ever heard in my life. And then it just kind of sets in the tone where I feel like from there I can go musical. I can go classical with some of the movies I watch. I can go weird with The Night Before an Office Christmas Party. You really just kind of tease up a lot of routes for me to go. And that's kind of where I feel like, okay, now I can get things going.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I would love it if my Christmas season kind of kicked off with a movie because for a long time, it would be just watching the Santa Claus with my brothers.
Yeah.
But I actually don't get, even though it's one of my favorite Christmas movies, I never get around to like firing it up anymore for whatever reason. I just,
You don't want it to be
by,
bad.
by the,
That's one where I worry it could be bad.
no,
May
I
not hold
don't,
up.
I know it won't be bad. I love that whole movie.
Yeah, I think that
I
first one is
It
pretty
holds up, but yeah, there's always a
fun and
concern.
safe.
Yeah, I still laugh every time he's talking about being in traffic and he's like, oh, look at that 3-car pilot. Save, he's like yelling at the lady. That's not very ladylike. It's it. Christmas at the
Uh,
pound. That joke gets me too.
Yeah.
I believe we did. We've reviewed the Santa Claus, so
We had you can go back and listen
go
to
back
our
and listen
Some
to
of the
that
Santa-
on
yeah.
SoManySequels.com.
It was one of our very first So Many Santas.
Before we get into our topic of the week, have you guys watched anything in the past week that stuck out to you that you want to share with the class?
Finally saw Barbarian, and what the fuck was that crazy shit?
Oh yeah, I know you and
I
David
think
both
we've all
saw
seen
it.
it now. It's like, what in the world?
I watched it. It made me feel bad, as most good horror movies do. They made me feel sick, and I wanted to go home. I love the ending because when it ended was exactly when I was like, I'm done with this. I
Yeah.
would very much like to stop being in this world.
Yeah.
And what if I had to offer like a real criticism of it is that it would do this thing where it would like slow pace out its story and then it would get cool and it would be scary thing, hard transition to a completely new story. And that's fine because all the stories were interconnected. But it would ramp up to the scary part and then something scary would happen and it would cut to a new thing, right? And the first time I didn't really think about it that much. The second time it did it, I was like, okay, is this going to be a thing where like every time it starts to get scary, it cuts away in order to make me go like that? All right, well, whatever. But it was pretty daggum creepy.
Wow.
And I wanted to be on Justin Long's side, and then I wasn't.
Yeah, right. Okay, Barbarian. Yes, very good pick. Did you guys watch any Christmas movies? You gotten into that yet?
No, and other than the one that we're talking about
Right.
today, I have not watched any other Christmas movies. I did squeeze in a few more movies. I squeezed in Morbius
Oh no.
from earlier this year. Finally got around to that.
Hard.
That's how you know the Christmas season has started is when Morbius comes on.
Morbid time.
I'll tell you what, that movie really did feel like it had been held in a time capsule from 2007 and someone finally got around to release it.
Yeah, I believe that.
I watched I watched 2 movies with the word beast in the title. I watched Beast with Idris Elba where he's trying to escape a lion. And then I watched The Sea Beast, a Netflix animated film. And from one of the directors of Big Hero 6. And
Which beast was better?
Sea Beast was better.
Okay.
It's good. I recommend watching it. It's super heavy-handed with its messaging at the end, but other than that, it's fine.
All right. Good to know. I went heavy on Christmas movies this weekend I'll briefly go through them. I basically went in, Netflix has become the new hallmark of Christmas movies in a way. So they have a ton of options. So I went through that kind of phase. There's one with Freddie Prinze Jr., who I was surprised to find out hasn't really acted on screen in many years. He's done a lot of voice work, but he's not really been on film in at least a decade.
No, he's done a lot of writing for the WWE too.
Yeah.
That's in his background.
Get out of Wait,
A
what?
lot of writing.
No, it's not. We'll go into that off mic. It was good. It was good for a Christmas Hallmark style movie, I will say. I gave it a 3-star on Letterboxd, and David, your wife Nikki, actually commented on my review of it and was like, "That seems generous, but I'll allow it." And I had to reiterate that Christmas movies have a slightly different rating system where I'm willing to go higher just because of the expectations.
Yep.
So I said it was a 3-star Christmas movie, probably a 2-star regular, but it's cute. But my favorite one that I watched this weekend, unrelated to what we're watching today, is this Christmas movie on Amazon Prime that's called Your Christmas or Mine, and The only person I know in it was Asa Butterfield, if you're familiar with him at all.
Okay.
I was surprised to find out he's an adult. And it's this British Christmas comedy where the night before Christmas, him and his girlfriend that he met at college are saying their goodbyes for Christmas because he's going to go to his family and she's going to go to hers. But at the last minute, they decide to surprise the other and switch trains. So he goes to her family and
Oh,
she
no.
goes to his family, but they don't know about each other.
That's classic.
That's
Great.
Because they
beautiful.
met at college and they're far away. They haven't met their families. They don't even know they're seeing anyone. So Christmas hilarity ensues. Secrets
Does it?
are revealed. Love is in the air. That was a 4-star Christmas movie.
Oh, good one. I
Dang.
was ready for you to be down on it.
No, it actually, the performances were quite charming. So I liked their chemistry.
All right. All right. That sounds good.
Yeah, yeah. So
Amazon Prime exclusive, or is it just
it's one of their Prime original movies.
okay?
So I hadn't heard of it and I was scrolling and I was like, all right, this sounds cute. And it was. So I recommend that if you're in the mood for that kind of thing. But I guess let's go ahead and start talking about our main feature of the week. For so many Santas this year and most years, we each pick our own movie, have the group watch. This week, we're watching Spirited on Apple TV Plus. This was Garrett's pick. So why don't you explain to us why this movie stuck out to you as something we should do?
Marketing.
Bye. You know what? Honesty
No.
is the best policy.
Yeah, you know what? This is like, to my knowledge, at this point in time, the biggest Christmas movie that has been released. It's not in theaters or anything like that, but it's got mega stars Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell, the Christmas King, and mega star Octavia Spencer. And who doesn't love those three? To start
Right.
with, all of those three are incredibly charming and wonderful in their own ways. And so to put them together in the spirit of the season type movie, you wrap it in with a musical and a big musical at that. You know, it was very big. It felt big. Yeah. It just felt like a Broadway show at points where it looked like it was on a sound stage and they were just really going for it. And that's really the main reason why. I mean, the A-list stars, Apple TV Plus is really trying to put stuff out there. And outside of this, I haven't seen a lot of new Christmas movies. We always try to work them in. That's what drew me to this.
And what did you think? What were your expectations and did it deliver?
I think it exceeded mine. I go in with low expectations, honestly, with most Christmas movies. Despite the fact that this is Will Ferrell, and despite the fact that this is Octavia Spencer, despite the fact that this is Ryan Reynolds, that doesn't mean anything. It can be hot trash easily. And this was not. This was a really fun and modern take on a story that we're all very familiar with. And I like when people have the creativity to say, hey, here's a story that we've seen 145 million times and no one can do it better than the Muppets. So let's try to move over here and do something with this core and create something new. And I really appreciated that. I think that the twists that they threw in there with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds dynamic and how they learned from each other with each other at the same time. And you learn a little bit more about the Ghost of Christmas Present and his past and his future. And then from that, Ryan Reynolds learns about his past, present, and future. And it was just a really nice dynamic. And I almost felt like this is a movie that I could watch at any point in time and not feel like it's just strictly a Christmas movie. Christmas is like a big element in there, but I feel like I could watch this at any point in time because it also just feels like a good coming of age kind of a story where people are just finding themselves through Christmas. So I liked it a lot.
All right. David, what did you think about
That's
Spirited?
good. That's good. You know, I gotta say too, I had no expectations because no marketing really reached me beyond a TikTok that Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds did earlier this year, where they sang a song that was unrelated, but they were just in a video together, and I was like, that's Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. And I think I saw one production still at some point, leading me to believe that this was another Greatest Showman, Jingle Jangle esque, like high level musical with sort of like hip hop influence, right? And it wasn't, but highly exceeded my expectations. Got to say, guys, I wish that we'd done this one last so that we could bookend our year with Ghost of Girlfriend's Past and then Spirited, both great films, in which highly referential of A Christmas Carol. So I had no idea what it was going in. I had zero idea what I was getting into. All I had seen is the poster with Ryan and Will Ferrell on it. And so the way it starts off. So, I mean, just to give the audience a little bit of a summary of what it's. Will Ferrell and is the Ghost of Christmas Present. He and the Ghost of Christmas Past and Future. They do this thing that they did to Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. It's like a show that they do. They refer to it. It's very meta. They refer to it as seasons, and they refer to all of these sort of very Hollywood slash theater references for how they do things. You see transitions, and they talk about, we're gonna go back to this scene, all that stuff. Everybody's actors and things like that. And it's very creative. It builds off of the idea of A Christmas Carol, so it really owes its story to that as a thing going in. But A Christmas Carol is so is the word is ubiquitous correct? Is that the right word? Like it's so common knowledge, A Christmas Carol. That
Ingrained in your culture.
yeah, and
You just
people
know
know
it.
it. So there's no like background you have to do. It's just right there. Sorry, I think my computer just
Right, right. They're even very meta about it in the movie,
Mhm.
referencing, "Is this a Chris? Are you doing a Christmas Carol?"
I know that's the
and
thing. It's like so Christmas Carol within the universe is a story that I guess is Dickens based on true events.
You can
Um,
Christmas Carol, bitch.
I actually loved that. I always liked Christmas Carol stories generally. You're right, the Muppets do it pretty much better than anyone.
Yeah.
And the great thing about this is that it wasn't really trying to do a Christmas Carol. It was trying to do a twist on it, very similar to, and they even reference this movie, 1988 Scrooged, again
Great movie.
with Bill Murray. And what I loved about this was I honestly had no idea what was coming next through most of the movie. Like every time it would start to get to where I was like, okay, this is what's going to happen now. Complete different turn. I started to get mad myself at Clint, aka Ryan Reynolds, because I was like, no, get back to the thing. We're supposed to be doing a Christmas. And then I was like, oh, right. He's trying to avoid that. That's the whole point. And so that really tickled me about it. I thought it was great. The music's great. The music is fantastic. Ryan Reynolds, I think, made a real case with this movie for him to land a role in a new version of Music Man because he's pulling some Harold Hill-esque stuff at the beginning of this Harold Hill, I should say, stuff at the beginning of this movie, man. Him being like this PR guy who creates scandals as a way of like, I don't know, it's very cynical, but at the same time, it's very entertaining to watch him craft all this stuff. I actually watched that musical number twice at the beginning, just because there's so many little great lines stuck in there. What did you think, Josh?
Right, yes, agreed on all those counts. Really enjoyed it. My expectations were kind of neutral because I really didn't know what to expect. I like Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds, and while they are beloved people, they are also quite polarizing. Some people truly hate both of them, even if most people love them. So and like you said earlier, Garrett, just because these guys are in it does not mean it will be good. They both make stinkers just as often as they make good movies. So I was like, you know what? I don't even know. I don't know what to expect. So I went into it with very little expectation and came out quite surprised for all the reasons you guys gave. I really liked how I don't think I've seen a retelling of A Christmas Carol that tied the original story into this story quite like this. I want to being careful to avoid spoilers because I think people should enjoy twists and turns because there are several in this movie for the first time. So I just hadn't seen it done like this with this kind of meta commentary on it, addressing the existence of the story in the story. So I thought that was cool. The music was fantastic. Music was done by Paul and Pasek. They're known for The Greatest Showman, La La Land, and another big one. Oh, Dear Evan Hansen. They wrote the Broadway lyrics, so they're very popular right now. And I thought the songs were catchy. What really shocked me, though, I think the biggest surprise to me in the whole movie was seeing Will Ferrell sing that Unredeemable song so
Oh,
genuinely without any kind of self-deprecating antics, and that shocked me. I was like,
that was
"Wow, he's actually really good at that kind of thing."
They played it pretty straight for the most part. There's some
Yes.
fun jokes in there in some of the songs, but some of them are just, huge show-stopping numbers.
Really,
yeah.
truly, and I did not expect that from him. I
Yeah.
could see Ryan Reynolds pulling something like that, but I don't know. Will Ferrell, even in moments like that, tends to still be a character that is goofy. And while his character in this is goofy, he's not at all times. They pull it back when it's appropriate, and he
Right.
knows how to be serious. So that was cool. Um, and yes, David, I also felt like whenever I knew whatever was coming next, I was usually wrong. There's a point where I thought, wow, this seems to be wrapping up. And then I like hit the remote button and saw there was quite a lot of movie left. And I was like, what is left to do? And that's when they take it into a direction that I'd never seen done before. And that was really cool. So I just have nothing but praise for it, really. There are
Can we
aspects of it where I thought it ran a little long if I to criticize. It is
Yeah.
over 2 hours. A lot of musicals are just because music drags it out a bit, so it balances, but it is a little long.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and there is one song that I feel like if you were gonna cut for t there was a well, they did cut a song for time that plays during the credits, but that's not too big of a
Right.
spoiler, but if there was another one, it was gonna be it's probably the funniest song in the movie, but, yeah, I can understand why they're like, "It's the funniest song in the movie, we gotta leave it in." I won't spoil anything because it's actually a pretty funny recurring bit once they start it.
in addition to the, we've talked about the music and the stuff, but I also wanted to call out the choreography and the costumes because I thought both of those were absolutely fantastic. I mean, Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds both looked dapper. Octavia Spencer was beautiful, and everything that just the way
Great.
that they did each individual ghost was really funny. I like the way that they dressed the ghost of Christmas past. She was not as prevalent in the story as some of the other ghosts, but I thought that her contrast of style was really nice to see compared to what you get with the traditional kind of story.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I don't wanna overlook Octavia Spencer. She has some great she has,
Versatile.
like, the same song 3 times, but I mean, it's a song that, like, grows throughout the movie, it develops it, and so, like, she's great, man, I'll tell you what, I didn't know she could sing so well.
She's like
Um,
the you know, you feel with her because she's kind of put into a situation that she doesn't agree with. And, it's about finding that line of how far will I go in certain situations. And it really also does a good job of highlighting why they are trying to improve Clint.
right, and I also wanna say too, like, people are probably gonna have questions, they're probably gonna have, wonder whether or not Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell are good singers. And I'm sure that they probably did a little bit of vocal tuning at times. They do that with every
Yeah, of
musical
course.
anyway. But I thought they actually both did really well. They both have a lot of character in their voice, and that I think that's what they kind of played to was they're not like, I'm trying to think of like they're not like belted out the most incredible singers in the world, but they've got a lot of character in their voice, and that really helps.
No, they're
Mhm.
perfectly competent singers. I mean, they both have sang professionally before, even though they're not known for it. But the music also helped them there, where it didn't require. They sang songs that didn't require, a big belter or anything like that. So it was good that they actually cast it to match the what is needed for a singer.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure they worked on them with it.
on
Or
Ryan Reynolds, though, another thing I liked about him is, he right now probably more than any other actor plays himself all the time. It's all he
he's
does.
so good at it.
But somehow, yes, he's so good at it that you're okay with it.
He yeah,
Yes.
he is probably the youngest, newest, most recognizable version of the Shatner technique, which is where you just create a persona that you are on and off screen. Because like, he like, that's his whole persona is on Twitter, on YouTube, is he just has this like, "Hi, I'm Ryan Reynolds" thing where he's just, like, always goofing around, or he has this sort of, like, smart dumb guy persona that he just does so well. He's done it in most of his movies.
Yeah, yeah, and what I think shows how talented he is with it is that in this movie, I felt like he tweaked it enough to slide him into being unlikable,
Oh, for sure.
which is what he needed to be. Because most of the time, a Ryan Reynolds character is very
Charming.
sarcastic and rude, but still extremely charming, and you're on his side. You always love Ryan Reynolds. But this time, there's enough evidence of being like, wow, this guy's a jackass that he can tweak it without changing his persona, but you switch to disliking him up until, the natural point of A Christmas Carol where where you
He
realize
becomes redeemed.
he is
Yeah.
likable. Yeah.
Oh,
So kudos to him on making me hate him for a good chunk of the movie like I was supposed to.
yeah.
Yeah, to really kinda, like, needle it just enough, and, like, that I think that there's a subtlety in that. And I would love it to see and uh, for likewise, from Will Ferrell's point of view, I think this is probably the most what's the word I wanna use? this might be the most like balanced performance we've seen from Will Ferrell since maybe Stranger Than Fiction. Maybe I'm missing a movie somewhere in there, but like he's a goof a lot, right? Like that's his whole thing is he's kind of this grown man child who just has no inhibition control. And here he has a lot of like he's trying to keep it controlled and Ryan Reynolds is just needling the goof out of him a little bit, you know what I mean? And so you actually end up with, I think, a pretty, even thing. Like he's not trying to make you laugh every time he's on screen, but just the nature of him getting frustrated with Ryan Reynolds, which usually it's Will Ferrell doing the frustrating, so it's nice to see it the other way around.
Yeah, this really also had, and again, I think I mentioned this didn't feel like a just regular Christmas movie. This felt like a movie, and I don't mean
Felt
that as a
like a real proper go to the theater movie.
it
Yeah.
did. Well, and we
Oh,
you
like
can go back and listen to our Christmas rules episode that we did a while ago. But one of my Christmas rules was that a Christmas movie in and of itself isn't afraid to hit you over the face with its Christmas movie. This relied on the fact that it is a story connected to Christmas, and I think that just helped with the overall story. Once you see these characters develop, and again, there's an interesting kind of a shift that happens, and I think that really just kind of helps develop those characters, and it becomes like almost like a father-son story at a point. And I just kind of like that little dynamic that they had there, and it made it feel bigger than just here's a new Christmas movie for you.
Sorry, I started laughing because I just remembered something Will Ferrell says in the movie, and it made me laugh again. Yeah, you're right. This totally is a Christmas movie. I had to consult my own rules. I had to go back and look just to make sure everything evened out. And there was a close moment, but then I remembered that there's a key context that you has to be contained within that rule. I won't get into it here, but I'll tell you what. You guys will know what I'm talking about. For those who haven't seen it, I'll stay vague. But there is a moment in this movie where we see the future and did something that I honestly, when it first happened, I went, "Oh, that is too much." Like they
Mhm.
really, that's over the top. But then it genuinely hurt my heart, and I went, "Oh well." It did. I care though. Like I genuinely care in this moment, and so maybe that's what you got to do. At first I was like, "That's crossing a line" because the subject matter it's very intense. So, I was like, I think whoever they crossed the line with this, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, that's the only consequence that's really gonna hit you, like, that's what they gotta do. So, I mean, without spoiling it, that was
No,
a thought
you're
I
right.
had.
You're
Well, and
right
I think,
because
yeah.
that type of thing is really, yeah, you're right. It's really intense and tragic, but it's also something that happens.
Well, and
So
we
it,
also, I think that helps with the messaging because I think part of the messaging is also we live in such a divisive and polarizing atmosphere right now in general that
Mhm.
sometimes
no, we don't.
the, the only thing that can even kind of change someone is if they're directly ish responsible for an incredible tragedy. And
Right.
that is the only way to get them to rethink because, that is you talked about Ryan Reynolds being able to change his personality, and that is what ratcheted it up. I mean, he is a modern day Ebenezer Scrooge. But in it, like Scrooge today is Ryan Reynolds as opposed to what we think of Ebenezer Scrooge back in the day.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. But those
Yeah.
people
Well,
like
and
that exist, and that is the only way sometimes to break through their own damn ego.
by the time we get to that point in the movie, it is pretty clear that Clint would not, cannot be moved by anything less than something that is just extremely tragic. Like he's not cared about anything else that's happened
Yeah.
up to that point, and some of it's pretty bad. Well, but that's the whole point, right? Is that he's so unredeemable that he's not even worth trying. That's kind of the whole idea in that.
Exactly. And these guys did not make a visit, unfortunately, to when they mentioned that they had tried one other unredeemable before, I was like, "Oh, Ghost of Girlfriend's Past, of course." Um, but unfortunately, that
Is that a
doesn't.
Christmas movie?
No,
I don't know. I've
no.
never seen it.
It takes place
No,
at Christmas
you've
though,
seen
doesn't
it.
it?
You've seen it. We watched the videos here.
Ghost of
Oh, that's
Girlfriend's
right, we
Past?
did. Yeah, we
Yeah, that
did.
was the first movie we
That was
watched
a
this year, remember?
Yeah, that was our, rom-com.
We reviewed Ghost of Girlfriend's Past in the
Gosh,
year of our Lord 2022.
gosh, how could like, you can't be this far gone. The
You
first movie
guys,
we did this year.
I don't know.
I'll pull up the podcast right now. We can listen
I
to it
no,
back.
I believe you. I just
You might need
clearly
to.
have wiped it.
You
We've
hate
done
it.
so many movies,
You hated it.
so many sequels.
I hated it so much I wiped it away. I don't even remember liking it or disliking it.
We also reviewed What If with Daniel Radcliffe. You
See,
want me
that I remember.
I'll just go back to the beginning of the year. We'll see which ones retained. Yeah.
That's
Um,
funny.
yeah. I forgot. I was something else I was going to mention, but yeah, it definitely has started me into the Christmas spirit.
I would agree with
Good.
that.
And then
Yeah,
also, I
very
just kind of want to
Christmassy.
put this soundtrack on and listen to it because it's pretty, like,
Good.
most of the songs work pretty well out of context, too.
There's usually every year there's a big musical that comes out, and I download the soundtrack on Spotify or whatever and listen to it all month too. And this will probably be that because I'm not aware of another musical coming out this winter. But
Sure.
I do love a good musical, and this one had a lot of catchy songs.
One other, like a light criticism I want to offer of the movie is that it pins a lot on, this isn't a heavy spoiler, but it pins a lot Clint's relationship with one of his siblings. And I feel like the movie didn't do quite enough to show us why that sibling was so good, right? I don't feel like they did.
I'll agree with that.
They didn't do quite enough to establish why she was this, you know, bigger presence, like a very important presence. And I feel like they could have gotten a little more into that, but I feel like that story, that premise in itself interfered with this idea of Clint getting out of the haunt. So like that was my only real criticisms. I think they could have expanded that more, and I feel like we would have understood a little bit more of why it was so tragic for him.
I do have one criticism with it, and I will give a slight possible spoiler warning because it has to do with the end. So my problem with it is I don't like bringing this American work crisis culture into the whole thing that they were doing to try to better people. I get that it's funny. I disagree with the premise that they should expand to the point where they're unhappy again. 'Cause
You're
that
not
will create
wrong.
a problem with the people they're trying to fix. So that's
Right.
my one criticism with that.
Right.
I don't think you're wrong about that. But yeah, it's hard. I can't really say much more.
Also I don't know, it's a very like of its time movie, I think. It'll be interesting to see how it holds up over like, a decade, 2 decades. There is a joke about the pandemic in it, and which was funny in the moment. But I don't know if it'll be funny 20 years from now or not. And yeah, I don't know. I did find it really interesting gosh, I don't want to, that's a spoiler too. But anyway, yeah, I don't have much more I can say about the story itself. I think the story is great. I think the music's great. It's great.
Yeah, agreed.
I do want to say I'm trying to like look up the production of the movie, and I can't get an accurate amount of information. Supposedly $75 million was spent just for the talent, just for the talent on the movie. But that's also the listing for like what the budget is. So Apple TV must not have released what the official budget for the film was.
Probably not.
But they said that initially $60 million had been spent on talent, and that was later increased to 75 million. So
The wealthiest company in the world can afford it. That's all we need to know.
that's true. Oh, yeah.
It did have a limited theatrical run, which I thought was cool.
Oh, did it?
It did not play anywhere here, but they had it out for a week and then they dropped it on Apple TV Plus.
Straight
So
up could see this movie being nominated for like costumes for set design. Honestly, I think that those two things and music, I think
Yeah,
those three
probably.
things really stood out for this movie.
I think a best original song is definitely possible.
yes, can you look right now?
Winning
Will
the
Ferrell
or the
performing
Oscar?
Unredeemable on the Oscars stage. The Oscars are back, baby. No one's ever been more relevant.
Either that,
Listen,
I
you
mean, honestly,
you put
could,
Will Ferrell on an Oscar stage singing that song, that'll get some viewers.
you could go with that. You could go with The View from Here. You could go with that Christmas Morning Feeling. That was also a hot song. Bringing Christmas back, with Ryan Reynolds performing. That was fantastic as well.
Oh my God, Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell host this year's
There's
Oscars.
There's a great line. Oh, that's actually a fire idea.
That is a great idea.
And have them perform their best original song. It was
Hey,
there's a
Hollywood,
line in
I'll
there.
produce it. I'll be cheaper than everybody else too.
Yeah. Bringing Back Christmas. When I listened to it the second time, I heard the line where he said, "Every Facebook loving boomer wants to start a culture war," or something like that. And I was like, okay, that's too real. All right.
Too real.
I know that we want to be real, but let's not be that real.
I really liked the Good Afternoon song. It was funny.
Good Afternoon is a
Hilarious.
great song.
Hilarious.
So good. Okay. What do we think? What do we think the letterbox feels about this spirited Christmas movie? I feel like this is going to be an interesting one.
I
Uh,
think it's gonna be lower than what we think it should be
Right.
I
because
agree.
I think people are gonna like it, but I think
Mhm.
there's gonna be enough I say healthy, probably bordering unhealthy cynicism toward it because it's Christmas and it's joyful and it's not
It's got a
cinema. But
it's got a
It's
lot of
not a
potential.
movie, it's a Christmas movie.
Right. It's got a lot of potential things going against it. There are people who are anti-Reynolds. There are people who are anti-Ferrell. There are people who are anti-Christmas. There are people who are anti-Apple. So there could be a lot of different things going into it. My guess is a 3.3.
okay. Dang.
Uh,
That's a good
I'm gonna
guess.
go lower with 3.0. I almost want to give it a 2 point.
Man.
No.
You said 3.0? Man. I don't think it's lower than that. But I guess I'll bet on the high end and go 3.4.
Okay, so
Yeah, I see.
3.4
Yes,
for
please.
Josh,
Yeah.
3.0 for me. David, what'd you say?
3.3.
3.3. Coming in right around in the middle, 3.1, which means I take the cake
Oh,
this time.
3.1. All right.
One.
I respect that.
That's
Yeah,
fine. That's fine.
higher than
Any hot
expected.
reviews? Any hot reviews that we can check out?
Oh, you know what? I didn't even look at the reviews. Let's see what we got here. Yet another groundbreaking performance from Ryan Reynolds as himself.
That's
No,
what movie
guys,
stars
it's
always.
not. It's himself, but you don't like him. That's the difference.
I tell you what, that's what movie stars used to do.
And
All
it,
right,
you're
They
right. You're
just
right.
play basically the same person every movie. That's why you casted them because that was the bit. I want I'm trying to think of somebody. I want Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh, well, who's he gonna play on this one? He's gonna play a greased up meathead. That's what he always plays.
I like to imagine Ryan Reynolds was so sick of Hugh Jackman bragging about The Greatest Showman that he went out of his way to make a movie that ridicules musicals out of spite. Spirited is a self-deprecating Christmas musical that hates its own existence, and I love it. 4 stars.
That's good. That's good.
That is, yeah, that's
That beats
powerful.
me now, can you, Jack?
I love their relationship. That's the greatest Christmas gift we have.
It is. It truly is. All right. Well,
What do we think? Where we have this one for us?
on my Christmas movie ratings, it's a 4-star.
Similarly, 4-star. That's what I'm gonna do.
Same Christmas movie, 4 star.
Awesome. It would have had to have
4-star movie.
been. It would have had to have been like incredibly either emotionally crushing or so funny that I could not get through it for it to like be a 5-star movie. I think as a Christmas film, I don't, I have a few 5-star Christmas movies, but they're more nostalgia plays a role. So I don't know.
No, you'd have to really push out an instant classic to get a 5-star Christmas movie.
And
And
is
this is
like
close.
that.
This is close.
It's
I want
good.
to. We talked about things that we watched, and I want to jump back to that real quick because there is another Netflix movie that we have reviewed that's also very good that I did watch, and it's Jingle Jangle. That movie is a banger of a movie, and it's underrated and underappreciated, and
We
that
watched
is a really close to a 5-star Christmas.
It
We
is.
watched it 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And it's rewatchable.
it's very
It
rewatchable.
was still
I tell
good
you
the
what.
second time.
Great. It's a pretty good movie. However, there is a line in one of the main songs that I don't get it.
I know.
Says the square root of
Remember.
impossible is me.
We
That is
It's her. She's the square
any-
root of impossible.
That don't make no damn sense. All right, and you know it. The square root of impossible is me.
I agree. I brought it, I said the same thing. It doesn't make sense, but it's catchy. The song is
all-
all nonsense, but it's
Here's
catchy.
a fair question. Now,
Gibberish.
what mathematical equation like that makes sense to either one of y'all?
Huh?
If you look
I
at a
don't-
math equation that is a
That-
real math equation, would you understand it, or would you
that-
think
no, that
I
whole
can't see
movie-
it possible of the square root?
That
of
whole
things?"
movie is gibberish math equations where they're like, if we take the circumference of courage and multiply by the longitude of caring,
Laffy
we
Taffy.
don't have this, exactly. It's all kinds of that. I think it's Forrest Whitaker is the old man in that movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good movie. I like it a lot. We go listen to our Jingle
Go
Jangle
listen
review.
to our review. It's a good one.
Yes, please do.
There's so many Santas. Do we know? Do we want to announce? Do we want to leave it as a Christmas present for our listeners?
It depends on if Josh has his. Did you solidify yours?
Not yet.
Yeah, well then mine's solidified, so I can announce it now, or we can leave it as a present. What do you want
Go
to do?
for
guys?
it. I'm excited because I
Announce it.
All right, here we go, guys. I wish I had it queued up as a photo. We will be taking a trip in the Wayback Machine, all the way back to I think the '90s, because we're gonna be watching Ernest Saves Christmas. That's right. I mean,
He
Vern,
pulled the trigger and he did it.
we're gonna do it. Ernest Saves Christmas. I'm gonna have my, you know what I mean, Vern, like counter ready to go, and we're gonna have a ton of fun.
I know I've seen this movie, but I, for the life of me, cannot tell you when, where, or why. It was at it was either at school, it was either at daycare, or
Right.
some mystery place in between that age. But
Yes.
I remember watching it with a bunch of kids
I
and just thinking, what is it? Because he like hobos it at some point in time, right? Or is that something else?
I don't know. I
Maybe
mean,
that's
honestly,
another thing.
I know I have seen it at some point. Bits of it are in my memory, but I do not know when, like you said, where or how. I will have to figure out if we can explain the concept of Ernest to the younger crowd that we might have, or the foreign crowd that we might have, because according to our rap, we have a lot of listeners in other countries. But yeah, it should be a blast though.
I mean, I can't help describe Ernest. I was not an Ernest child growing up, so I didn't really watch much of it. I don't think I've ever seen Ernest Saves Christmas.
Really?
I
Okay.
I'm only adjacently aware of Ernest. Uh, I know Jim Varney as Slinky Dog,
Yeah.
so this is
David, would you say the closest is like redneck Mr. Bean?
Yeah.
that
'Cause
sounds terrible.
he talks a lot more though.
He talks more. He talks, yes.
It's
But
I don't
mean,
even
like this,
know.
the idiot level is very similar.
Explaining the craze of Ernest is like would be like explaining why the fax machine took off. You know, like I don't really know the true origins, why it caught on. You know what I mean? And why it disappeared. Because it
It
did.
used
It
to
just
be there'd be movies about a male idiot, and there just aren't anymore.
Well, his rise to stardom is so unreplicable, I think, in these days. Because, like, okay, well, we'll get into this more next week. But what basically, he started off as a commercial pitchman, and it just blew up into somehow he developed national acclaim from local Pittsburgh commercials or something like that.
Hey,
Get into it more next week, but it's going to be either really funny or we're all going to come back next week and I'll be getting tomatoes thrown at me.
Ted Lasso started as a commercial, so he's the next Ernest,
It's true.
but soccer.
Well, we will see you next week with that then.
Yes, we'll be back next week
It's on
with
Disney Plus for anybody who I think.
Oh, good to know.
Disney
Okay,
Plus
good.
if
So
you want to watch with us.
Ernest Saves Christmas on Disney Plus. Watch that before next week if you're listening to this somewhat live, and we will talk about it then. So find us online at somanysequels.com. There you'll find our whole back catalog of episodes and links to our social channels. Go follow those and leave some comments and some likes. If you haven't already, it would really help us a lot if you left a review in the Apple podcast app. I think that's the only one where you can actually write a review. You can leave ratings in Spotify, but doing that stuff really helps more people see the show. So if you wouldn't mind helping us out by doing that, would be really cool. And if you really love us, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/so-many-sequels, where you can, for a very small fee, get access to our Discord channel and hang out with us there, where we talk about movies and share news and play games and all kinds of fun stuff. I think that covers it. So we will see y'all next time for the next installment of So Many Santas.